farming is not mailing some postcards once a month to an area. Like, to me, farming is way more involved than that. I mean, that's part of it, but I've always said, like, if you pick an area and you think you're geo farming, you're sending your newsletter, you're just sold, like this. If you start to door knock on top of that, you just put fuel on the fire.
Everybody, welcome to the show today. We have another twofer. We actually have the realtor who may have unintentionally inspired the podcast. So we're here today with Josh May, our co-host, and Scott Moe. Scott is an agent in Vancouver, Canada, who has been referred to by friends, clients, colleagues, people in the community as the neighborhood realtor because he grew his 100 million. I got to put my pinky to my mouth here, Dr. Evil Cell. He's grown his $100 million business by and large through working neighborhoods in his community that he has specifically selected. But there's a lot more to it than that. And that's what our episode today is going to focus on. So guys, Josh, Scott, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, happy to be here. And can I just say, we were chatting about this, but you've got two of the easiest last names you've ever had on this show. You've got Mo versus May. And what an opportunity to show how Scott Moe can go out and brand that name within his farm. I always tell agents, you got to find something that sets yourself apart in this business. And Scott Moe is easy, right?
Mo money, Mo results. That's actually my tagline, and people remember it.
Well, I mean, we don't even have to talk about farming today. We could just talk about having a name change, and maybe that could be the thing most agents are missing out on. So if you're not hitting the $50 million mark, consider changing your name or coming up with a fun play on that. But so you guys know each other through coaching and accountability. And the first thing I want to chat about is a little bit of the accountability side, because that is the backbone of everything else that we're going to talk about today. And I think a lot of agents would find it interesting to realize that two guys like yourself who are doing $100 million or so in team volume apiece have another person that they go to for accountability. So I'd love to hear what that has done for your guys' business and when you started that and kind of what that's led to for you.
Yeah. I mean, I can kick it off. Just give me some background, Scott, if you want me to here.
Yeah.
So Scott and I, we met, I'd say probably 8 to 10 years ago through the RE/MAX conference schedule. We're always out there seeking 2 to 3 really high level conferences where we can, connect with other top producing agents from all over North America. And that's where Scott and I initially met through some of these RE/MAX conferences. And then, to be honest with you, we got to a point where we were only spending a couple of days together, which seemed a little bit too short to have this connection to different realtors from around the country and again around North America doing great things. So we came up with an idea. We said, hey, let's pick 4 of us that really connect at a high level and let's push ourselves. So Scott and I have we've got 3 other people. So there's a group of 5 of us, and we meet every Monday morning, 11:15 Eastern time. So that's 8:15 in Vancouver. And it's really short and sweet. We're very much focused on one high level piece, and it doesn't actually have to be high level, one piece of accountability that is going to push our business forward for that week. And Scott's got some great examples of some things he's going to chat about where he said, I need to knock 100 doors. I need to knock 200 doors this week. I'm going to do this one thing. And then we report back the following week. We pick another item that's going to move our business forward. So it's short and sweet, Matt. And that's the thing, with these masterminds, you got to be careful to overthink things because what's the old saying? Complexity is the enemy of execution. And if you make things too complex, they just don't get done. And we've all been doing this long enough to know, let's make this quick, let's make it short, let's make it sweet, and let's accomplish it.
So a question I have, and I don't care who answers this, but you guys are both top producers. You're both big networkers. You've both been around the business for a while. You know a lot of other people. Why was Scott the guy, or why was Josh your guy? How did you choose an accountability partner? We all know a ton of people. How can I make the best decision on who's going to be a fit for me? Like, does it need to be someone that's at the same level of business? Do I want someone in a different market? Like, what should someone look for? Because this is something I think every agent needs desperately.
I don't know
Right.
about you, Josh, but I think it was just like a fit, like the group that we kind of all like gravitate towards at each conference. I mean, we're usually in the lounge in the evening, having a cocktail, talking business. Just kind of this similar interests. I mean, just like life. Like, why do you have your friends, right? And I think Josh was a good fit. I mean, the other guys in our little group that we've got just kind
Okay.
of gelled, right?
And we all run similar style businesses. Like, I'm not going to probably have an accountability group with somebody that's running a completely different business. We'd be
Sure.
having different conversations, but I've always admired, like, through these conversations, the type of business that Scott does, the size of his team, the community-based business, the focus on connecting with his farm. So I think we're all running a similar business and can push each other. But that's a great question, because I think point you're trying to drive home is there's a lot of options out there, and there's a lot of ways to run a business, right, Matt? And you've got to find people that you connect with and that can push you and that can get you to that next level. And I feel like we got a great group right now.
What I really like, so I know a lot of people will have accountability partners who are at different stages of their business, maybe ahead of them, but that's almost like a mentor. And I think it's really helpful to have an accountability partner who's in the trenches with you. Obviously, you're in the trenches here in Grand Rapids, Scott's in Vancouver, different markets, so you're not competitors, but you guys are still seeing a lot of the same challenges, successes, and opportunities. So I think it's almost like having someone that can hold you accountable, that's in it with you. I think can be really, really big. I'll actually throw this out there to anyone listening as a challenge. If you want an accountability partner but don't have anyone that comes to mind, send me a DM on Instagram, send me an email, and I will do my best to find someone to match you with. Because I think this is such a crucial thing, and not enough people are doing it until it just kind of pops. Like, you guys met each other and it made sense. But I bet you wish you would have done this
Right.
20 years ago.
Yeah. 100%. And I just want to point out this one other lesson here, because a lot of agents feel like conferences can be a waste of their time. Maybe it can be a waste of their money. Maybe it can be a waste of their time. But the question is, how are you going to think outside of the box to really make it count for you? Like, I can analyze this and I can say the conferences that we go to, I mean, these are 2-day conferences, but the real I don't want to say money, but the driving your business forward is in those relationships of those other people that you meet that are going to push you forward. And then how are you going to connect with them after a conference? That's why you go to conference, to connect with people, to network with people, to build relationships, to lean on people. So don't think of it as a 1 to 2 day. I got to be out of town for 1 to 2 days. Think about, like, how that can impact your business for the
And
rest of
also
your
going
career.
into it with a plan, right? Like, going into a conference with a specific goal of the type of person you want to meet or a problem that you want to get solved. I think if you go into a conference or any situation without a goal, it's easy to leave and think, well, what did I get out of this other than having a good time? I mean, I know, Josh, sometimes you do win thousands at the tables at these conferences, but I mean, I know you can't plan on that despite how good you think you are. So, it's always a little bit different. So, Scott, I want to talk about you for a second here. So, you have been in the business for 21 years. And the thing that I was most interested about when Josh mentioned you to me was that your business still comes from the same place today that it did your second year in the business. But it's the same thing that you started your first year in the business. So let's talk about farming. This is not, I know you're up in Canada, but this is not farming with cows. This is farming, like, actual going to houses, being a part of the community. I want to know everything, because we hear farming all the time. People ask me on a weekly basis, does farming still work? I always tell them yes, but only if you're dedicated. But I need you to give us the, like, master class in farming that I think will help people figure out what they actually need to do and figure out if they even have time for it.
Yeah, I mean, farming is not mailing some postcards once a month to an area. like to me, farming is way more involved than that. I mean, that's part of it, but I've always said, like, if you pick an area and think you're geo farming, you're sending your newsletter, you're this, you're just sold, it's like this. If you start to door knock on top of that, you just put fuel on the fire like that. I think what I did, I mean, it took a good couple years for the phone to consistently start ringing, but I'm sure it would have taken 10 years if I didn't door knock it, right? So, in a nutshell, like my basic plan when I first started was, and I did learn this from my wife's uncle. So I'll give Blair Miller all the credit on this one. But he was a big time farmer. He actually started farming in another town, another city here close to Vancouver called Richmond. He had a great business there. Then he moved out to the South Surrey area where I live, and he basically recreated that whole thing out here. So to me, when I got into real estate, I saw this and I'm like, this, it's do what others do that is successful and it will work. So he taught me what to do. You want to get something in the mail monthly. I didn't have the money at the beginning, so I was putting stuff into doors myself. I would go door to door with my newsletter, just put it in the door handle, do this. People see you doing this. They see you working. Love doing it in the rain. You got to do it in the rain. People really key in on that this is a hard worker. He's not just doing it on the sunny days. But monthly mail, door knock, the same area, right? Like 3 times a year, at least to start. People say, oh, that's too much.
So Scott, you said something so genius that I want to make sure everyone like writes it down and understands the gravity of it. And it's that part of door knocking and part of farming isn't just hoping that you get lucky every now and then. Part of it is showing that community that you are out there putting in the legwork. Because at the end of the day, I'm sure Canada is the same. We don't need more realtors. We don't, like, everyone knows one already. Like, we all have an uncle or a cousin or a best friend's brother who has a license. But what we want and what people notice is the hard work, the effort, and the presence that a good realtor is doing. And I mean, Josh, you're a great example of this in my neighborhood. Your team throws an ice cream social once a year in my neighborhood. Your team gives out flowers once a year in my neighborhood. I think your daughter and you have gone door knocking for Girl Scout cookies in my neighborhood. I mean, like, your team is around, and that is why you've probably gotten 4 listings that have sold for record prices. If anyone in my neighborhood is listening, I mean, like, Josh is the guy. But I mean, Scott, like, you mentioned that you were doing it in the rain. And I mean, I could almost see that being then a funny postcard that goes out of you door knocking in their neighborhood in the rain. I mean, people see that kind of effort and that gets noticed. I absolutely love that. And I want everyone to really realize that the effort is seen, and that is part of the strategy too.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, like I said, I mean, door knocking is key. You got to do it. And I don't ask for business. That's the other key thing I would say. Like, people come up to me like they know I'm a big farming guy. Like, well, what do you say? I'm like, hey, it's Scott Remax, just dropping off a notepad. Have a great day. Back away. If they want to talk, they're going to talk. I'm not, hey, Scott Mo Remax, you're going to know anyone wants to buy or sell, blah, blah, blah. Like, they don't want a salesman. They don't even want to answer the door. When you hand them something, a little item of value, you turn away. Hey, you just met them. They saw your face. They spoke to you. Good guy. Move along. If they want to talk, they're going to talk, right? And if you do this consistently, the trust level is increased. If they don't call you after 2, 3, 4 years of them seeing you at their door, I always say that they've got a real good reason why they didn't, right? You want to give them a good reason not to call you. Lots of friends, lots of people in the business, so I get it. But, if you're that person that's constantly talking to them at the door, there's really got to be a good reason if they don't call you. I mean, right. Maybe they don't like you. I don't know. But.
Well, I have a follow-up question on that because that's amazing. I love the low pressure approach, and I think that can work for a lot of agents to alleviate some stress, right? So let me ask you a question. Out of every 10 people that you talk to, you knock on the door, they open the door, you give the notepad. Out of every 10 people, what would you say, like, how many people does that turn into an actual real estate related conversation?
Well, in the beginning, a lot less, but now, like, it's almost a problem because it takes so long. Because, like, I would say 1 out of every 4, let's say, is actually, well, hey, Scott, how's it going? Hey, what happened down there? Why did they sell for that low? Or all of a sudden it's like, you're talking. So it takes a lot of time, but that's the reason you're out there, right? To talk. So now, yeah, it's tons. In the beginning, not as many, right? As they don't really know you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a great lesson that I want people to hear is you have gotten to a point, and let's remind everybody, we're talking to somebody that sells $100 million of real estate a year, right? And he said a couple things: being out in the rain, like building this community through consistency, and through all of this time, you're now to a point where for 25% of the conversations that you're having are turning into real estate conversations. That's amazing. It's just a long-term game. And I want to give everybody a reminder of consistency, effort, and how this has changed your
And
business.
that's the word, right, Josh? I remember it was actually at one of the last Remax conferences. I think it was Jared James. I think consistency is undefeated. I totally love that. I mean, it's been said different ways, but that's it. If you want to get in shape, if you work out every day, you're going to get in shape. You eat the right food every day, you're going to get in shape. If you want to make money in real estate farming, consistency. Pick an area, don't veer from it. Don't knock here and then go knock in that area and that. Just keep in the same spot and don't give up, because if you give up, it's done, right? It's like, who's that other guy? Brian Tracy, one of my favorite sales trainers ever. I listened to him way back in the day. We didn't have internet. We didn't have any. I had little tapes in my car, right? Tapes, maybe CDs at the time. But it's like a snowball, right? Rolling down the hill. Things start happening. People, oh, who's this guy? Who is this guy? All of a sudden, it's like picks up snow. And all of a sudden, 2 years, 3 years, it's like, this is the guy. We got to call this guy. He's here every day, right? But if you veer, like I get people all the time, oh, I knocked on 5,000 doors this year. Oh, yeah, where? Well, that area, no, just pick one area. Don't veer from it.
What
right?
I've also noticed too, there's something special that happens when you're the guy or gal that's been focusing really hard on an area for a really long time. Other agents stop and give up. And I mean, I don't want to force other agents to give up, but I mean, how intimidating is that for a new agent? They're at their office one day and their boss or their broker is like, oh, you have no business. You should try farming in your neighborhood. And they're like, oh, well, I would. But this guy, Scott, is the #1 agent in Vancouver and he's been farming my neighborhood for 20 years. I'm not going to bother getting started. And that's sad.
Well, let's asterisk that. I don't think I'm #1 in Vancouver.
Well,
but you're right. I mean, but there's lots of different areas, right? Like, I mean, it's probably true. Like, if you wanted to farm the area that I farm, you're fighting a bit of an uphill battle. But there's tons of other areas that I'm not door knocking consistently in the same, like, 10-minute walk from where I am.
Door knocking is one of the most time-intensive marketing activities there is. However, it's also one of the cheapest, right? Like, you don't, like, sure, the notepads cost some money and, there's a time component. But I always say to new agents, new salespeople in general in any career, you need to first start with the assets that you have. And that asset when you're a new agent is time. You have the time. You do not have the money unless you have a rich spouse or a rich uncle, and in which case, good for you. But you started with nothing. You took advice from a mentor. You added some accountability along the way. You had consistency the whole time, and now you're doing $100 million in sales. Well, I mean, what's the size of your team? Like, what does it look like for you guys to do $100 million in sales?
So my team is varied in size. The biggest my team has ever been has been me and 3 other agents. One assistant I'm running, so we're quite efficient in terms of that. We're now down to me and 2 other agents, which is a nice number, I think. But like I said, I mean, the other thing I will preface this with is, our price point up here is quite high. I mean, we're one of the most expensive spots in Canada to live here on the West Coast. So our average house price, detached house out in the suburbs is, $1.3 million, right? So, we're lucky in that regard. So
I was just going to ask one question. So with the door knocking, there's a lot of, with farming in general, there's a high level of organization that goes into that. You're not just like doing this willy nilly. How do we get started? Like, how am I isolating what neighborhood or geographic area I want to farm? Too big, too small? Is it where I live? Is it somewhere different? Like, I just want to give people a starting point here.
I mean, so when I started, I actually lived in Richmond, which is, 20 minutes, 30 minutes from here. Then I decided where I wanted to work. So I actually moved out here, right, to work out in the, Surrey, Langley area. And I drove around the neighborhoods. I looked around. I asked my wife's uncle, who was the realtor, where would you start today, right? So, like, well, you know what? There's this area over there. It's got some really old houses, and there's a lot of new building going on the acreages next to it. So people are probably going to start moving from there. So that's kind of how I picked it. You also got to look at, is there someone that's already dominating that neighborhood? Because if there is, like I say, there's lots of areas. So maybe pick a different spot. And once you've got that, just figure out how many homes are in that area. And like I said, I wouldn't go too big, because if we go too big, it's too much to do. You want to make sure that you're consistent, right? So pick an area, 500 to 750 homes, townhomes, whatever. And, in an area that you're comfortable door knocking, and then you got your half the battle's won. And then you just got to basically break it down by chunks. How many doors a night do I have to knock on? 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock is probably the prime time most people home. I would, basically someone that wanted to meet me to list their house or look at houses. Well, I'm busy from 4 to 7. I'm out door knocking, right? That's an appointment with yourself, with your business, right?
No, I love that. I love that, Scott. So one of the questions I had, and I want everybody to understand, I'm asking these questions today because I want to learn this stuff. Like, Scott, you are way ahead of me in your consistency with this. So let me ask you a question. One, if somebody doesn't answer the door, what do you do? Do you leave the notepad?
In the beginning, I would not leave anything, and I would have I had a sheet of paper for each house, which I'd flip on my clipboard, and each time I went, I would make a note. Female, male, dog. If they mentioned the dog's name, I'd write the dog's name down. And I would go on to the next. If they weren't home, I would not leave anything. I would do a second round of door knocking and try and get them. Eventually, I would get everyone. But in the beginning, I wouldn't leave. Now, most people I've met before, I will leave something. I will handwrite on the note, "Sorry, I missed you, Scott." Right? Just stay.
And I think that's because most Canadians say sorry like in every sentence, right? Like that's the stereotype, I think.
So follow-up question. So we've heard that you picked the farm. Now, out of curiosity, how big is your personal farm right now?
It's a little over like 1,200, and that's just because it started to build out, and there were some townhouses and things that were easy to knock. I just added in.
Okay, so you are doing some mailings, though, correct? I mean, I know that
mail once a month, like a newsletter, a community kind of newsletter type thing. Down here, kind of like this thing. We do a garage sale every year, right? So that's one of the things you want to do. We did an Easter egg hunt there at Easter. Community events, you got to mix in those, right? So like making sure you're doing things for the community. Sponsor the local sports team, the local the elementary school that's in that area. We always give them money every year for their country fair that they do. We do pumpkins, do a pumpkin event at Halloween. Again, just like community focused things, giving back to the community, because they're the people that are giving you the business too, right? And people appreciate that. I've got a lot of listings just because we called you because of everything you do for our kids' schools or the sports teams and this kind of stuff, right?
I mean, I think this is fascinating. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you said 75% of your business comes from this farm. Is that correct?
Yeah. And
Right.
I mean, a lot of that is people that lived in that farm that moved out of the area or like locally here still, and then they're reselling, right? So I would still attribute that to a farm source, right? Because that's the original introduction, right?
So at the end of the day, the reason I'm asking these questions because it seems like an amazingly efficient business in a very small section. I mean, some realtors were, and you point the finger at me on this. Like sometimes I'm running all over West Michigan, and I maybe don't really have an identity. And the fact that you can put 75% of your focus in a 1,200 home area, I mean, that's not a huge area. We're talking like a quarter mile, maybe, right? A mile.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really cool. You can be that efficient in real estate by
it's very cool when you get it going. And I live 10 minutes away. That I've got 2 appointments and they're both within 5 minutes of each other there. Like I'm not driving 45 minutes to the appointment. Now, I mean, I'm more spread out because business, like I say, is kind of spun out of that area. But in the beginning, I was basically driving to that area. That was it.
I had another agent one time tell me that when they were trying to select a sphere of influence, they specifically looked for an area where the dominant agent was aging out of the phase of life where they had kids and school stuff all the time. It was a female agent, and she basically said that she grew her business by just being very active in her local school community. She went to, kids drop off and pick up every single day. She went to every sports game. She sponsored everything, much like you're doing. But she said the agent who was previously dominating the market, her kids had graduated college. They weren't around as many things. They had their friend group solidified. They weren't meeting new people. And she went crazy hard on farming that area because, in essence, her farming it and then also being physically present at everything with kids. And, with kids, you have play dates and you have sports and all that stuff. It really amplified her results. So I think like for people looking to figure out where to start, if you're not Scott and your uncle doesn't tell you where to do it, that's something I've heard that can work well also.
Well, that's like farming too, right? You're just being present. You're in front of people, interacting. It's the same. I mean, you either do
Right.
that door knocking and you're in people's face, like face to face, or you're doing like those kind of things. And I mean, the other thing, like Josh does really good. I mean, the reason that, one of the things I like about what Josh's business is doing, he's big on YouTube right now, right? And to me, like back when I started, there was no YouTube, there was no Facebook, there's no iPhone, for heaven's sake, right? Now YouTube to me is almost like new digital door knocking that comes, because now I'm getting people, I'm going to appointments and people are like, oh, we feel like we know you, we watch your YouTubes all the time. It's the same as door knocking is, right? But it's online. So is there a better way to do it in the 21st century? Possibly. But with all this new technology and all these shiny objects, people get away from the basics, and the basics are still face to face is where it's at.
Right. The more effort and the more belly to belly time, the more successful that any marketing strategy will be.
And the consumer respects, we started this off, the consumer respects hard work, they respect effort, they respect consistency. And that's the thing, like this is one of the number one lessons I've ever learned in real estate is the minute that you start something and then the consumer sees that you gave up, like you're done. Like they're not gonna think that you have a great work ethic. So this is a great lesson for realtors to think about as they're planning, whatever it is, like execute the plan, because the minute that you start something and people see that you're doing it and then you give up internally, they're like, that guy was like, they tried hard for like a month and then they gave up. And so I think there's a huge lesson in your consistency here. I do have kind of an off the wall question, if you don't mind. I mean, it's not that off the wall, but you've been doing this for 20 years. I'm just kind of curious, like you've mentioned the neighborhood garage sale, which I think is genius, for people to do that. You've mentioned Easter egg hunts. You mentioned some really cool events. In your 20 years inside of your farm, what do you think that the most creative / impactful thing you've done is, like outside the box? Can you point to anything that you were like, wow, people talked about that for a long time. That was a really cool idea.
Unfortunately, I think it's one of those things that's the most amount of work, and I would say that it was, and I've gotten away from it since COVID. We now do it at a local market, have people come to us, but is delivering pumpkins to people's door. And I did that for probably 15 plus years, where we got a crew, got a flat deck thing loaded on the bins of pumpkins. I delivered like 1,200, 1,500 pumpkins, door to door, stapled Happy Halloween, Mo Real Estate Team on there, put that at people's door. Still to this day, I got a call from someone that doesn't even live in the area. Their kids live in the house, and they're like, oh, we called you because you used to give my parents pumpkins in Cloverdale. I'm like, it just still to this day, it just pays dividends. People appreciate it. It's a lot of work. I mean, geez, my back would be out for a couple of days after. But like I say, it's the hard work that gets the results. It's like there's no easy way to anything. Everyone thinks there's a new app, there's a new website. The business is just going to fly in. No, you got to work hard, right? Hard work.
So we should also point out that it appears you're in like devilishly good shape, and I'm assuming all this door knocking and pumpkin lifting is probably contributing to that. Maybe Josh, maybe me and you should try that. I mean, we wouldn't have to just go on long runs all the time.
I couldn't agree more. I got to stop trying to hand out like bottles of wine and mixed drinks in my farm. I got to get back to the
Yeah,
pumpkins.
Josh, you gave seeds away to my neighborhood. Those packets weighed about 2 grams. Maybe if you brought over like, a big pot of dirt with like real stuff in it like that, you could have got a good workout there. Well,
I love
I
it.
think this all goes back to consistency, right? Like whatever you choose, you gotta pick it, set it, be consistent with it, measure it. I like Scott, how you mentioned you were writing down who you went, what results you got. That is all huge. If someone wanted to get a hold of you for more information on farming, or if they have a buyer or seller in your area, Langley, Vancouver, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, my website, moteam.ca, moeteam.ca. CA is not, .com, and CA is the Canadian version. I don't know if you guys know that. But, yeah, and then at Mo Real Estate Teams, our YouTube channel, so you can hit me up on there too. But yeah, happy to answer questions if anyone's got questions with that. But like I say, I mean, consistency is key. You got to put in the work. You got to get face to face. You do that and don't give up. It cannot not work. It will. I guarantee it will, because I've known people that have done it in the past. I did it. Other people are going to do it. It works.
I love that. Josh, I want to end with you really quick. You're an agent in the market, doing a lot of business. What are you seeing this month specifically that's in terms of trend wise or anything you're noticing out there? What's happening in the trenches?
No, that's a good question. I mean, Michigan's, it's very competitive right now. We're in the heat of a spring market. You have to absolutely practice your craft right now to win for our buyers. I mean, there is relentless comes to mind. Like that's the one word that comes to mind right now, because like I coach my agents on this and I coach myself like this. When we're representing buyers, when we're helping sellers, we're literally we're not leaving any stone unturned to make sure that we give 110% to put our buyers in the best position. And I think that's what all agents need to understand in a competitive market right now, is like you need to go to bed at night with the simple fact that that you put 110% in, and you didn't need to make that extra phone call. You didn't need to send that extra text. Maybe you didn't win it, but you need to go to sleep at night saying, I know for a fact that I outworked everybody to try and get this deal done. And we're just seeing a lot of that right now. And the people that are getting in that mindset are winning. So I know that's completely different than farming, but you asked a question on market trends, and we are deep into how to win for our clients right this second.
I think that's a big thing that's different. It's different right now when it comes to being an agent than it has been forever. For years and years and years, it was be a nice, fun guy in the community. People will call you. You put in a couple offers in, you'll get a deal accepted. Right now, it's figuring out how to win in your local market. And it's almost like a weekly activity because the markets are changing week by week. Interest rates do something quick, that changes the game. There's a lot of variables, but if you can be relentless in your personal approach, whether it's farming, whether it's YouTube, whether it's something else, you can win. So guys, thank you so much for joining on the show today. I'm hoping everyone got pages and pages of notes. Looking forward to doing this again.